Hi, everybody. This is Caleb Jones, and this is the Alpha Male 2.0 podcast. Yet again, isn't this fun? Woo! So this is another one of those off-the-cuff podcasts. You guys seem to like these. You guys seem to like these when I just ramble about shit. Hopefully I don't ramble, but you seem to like it when I don't have an outline, which is fine with me. Less work on my part. I can just say, I'll just do a podcast and they'll just wing it, see what happens. I should have been like a radio, like a political talk show host like Rush Limbaugh, where I just talk for 3 hours about politics. I wouldn't make any money, but it'd be fun. And politics is kind of useless these days. The Western world's collapsing. Doesn't matter who you vote for now. But anyway, this is on the topic of social media. And I was originally thinking about talking about this topic in terms of business applications for social media, and I'm going to talk about that too. I'm going to open up the conversation to encapsulate all of social media. I was thinking the other day that one of the debates we've had over the last few years is the world a better or worse place with social media? In other words, is social media a net negative or a net positive? Net negative or net positive. In both cases, you will admit there are really good things about social media and bad things about social media. I think everyone admits that. So the question is it on net, is it a good thing or a bad thing for the world, for society, for whatever? And up until now, I have, believe it or not, this is going to sound very strange coming from me, I have not had an opinion on this. Which is odd for me. I have an opinion on everything. That's not true. I don't have an opinion on everything. But I have a very strong opinions because my opinions are based on facts that I can back up with facts, statistics, science, history, little things like that. Things that most people don't have to back up their opinions. And I just didn't really have an opinion on this. I knew social media was good and it's done a lot of good for the world. And there are things I've used social media for in the past, not only to make money, but other things like in my woman life, which I'll talk about in a little bit, that have helped. And I also understand that social media is pretty bad. A lot of bad things. And I've seen the results of a lot of bad things in social media. And I think I'm at the point now where I am leaning in the direction of saying that social media has been a net negative for people in modern Western society. The issue is that I don't know how much of a negative it is in terms of that net amount. I don't know if it's a lot of negative or a little negative. I would have to do a lot of research to really come to that decision, to really nail down, okay, it's a net negative and it's huge. The net negative is huge, or it's net negative, but it's small, so it's mitigatable. So the positives can still maybe outweigh the fact that it's a net negative, maybe blah, 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 blah. I don't know. And I really couldn't give you that answer. I try not to have strong opinions on things I don't know anything about or have not done the research on, which is why I don't have a strong opinion about this. You might even be able to convince me that I'm wrong and that social media is a net positive. You might be able to do that because I don't hold a strong opinion on this. As I said, I'm leaning in that direction. And because I've just seen so many things lately, and when I evaluate the last few years, I see so many negatives to society and to the world directly caused by social media. For example, the number one contributing factor to the fact that Americans are all furious and are just angry all the time about politics in ways other people in other countries are not, which is one of the reasons I left the United States, is because of social media. If you didn't have social media, you would not have the left-wingers so angry at the Trump supporters so angry at the left-wingers, the progressive left-wingers so angry at the corporate left-wingers. You would not have this extreme anger that you see, particularly among Americans, if social media was a thing. I know that for a fact. That's a guaranteed thing. Before social media, people felt strongly about politics, but you could still be friends. You can still be friends with people who are on the opposite political spectrum of you. You could do that in the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s. In the 2000 teens, no. Certainly when the Trump election came along, all of a sudden, people got divorced. People got fucking divorced. Girlfriends and boyfriends broke up. Families broke up. People in families stopped talking to each other in America now, just because of politics. And I know that's because of social media. Another problem that hits much closer to home in my business, in the Alpha Male 2.0 world, is I have received And it's gotten worse and worse over the years. It is the worst I've ever seen it this year. I'm sure it's going to get worse next year. An onslaught of men in my audience, they're usually young men in their 20s, who spend all their goddamn time on Instagram. And because they spend all their goddamn time on Instagram, Instagram warps their perception of reality, and it gets them to start thinking that the only way to have sex with cute girls is to be an Instagram guy, meaning you are ultra wealthy, you drive a Ferrari, you travel the world, and or you are ripped. You have six-pack abs, you're a male 10, you're a Dan Bilzerian, you're one of those guys, you're a fucking male model, then okay, you can have sex with cute girls. But if you don't have those two things, it is literally, quote, impossible to have sex with a hot girl. It's not unless you pay for it, of course. It's not possible. And I know for a fact these men, and there's a lot of these men who really think this shit. They don't know my history. Even men who know my history, I guess they don't believe me. I was out having sex with hot, younger women starting 13, 14 years ago when I was a divorced, overweight, balding, beta male dad. I was having sex with 18-year-olds back then. 18-year-olds, okay? And I was 35, 36, 37. And I was not rich, and I was not good looking, and I was chubby. I mean, my most hilarious thing is to see guys who are better looking than me complain they can't get laid. That's hilarious. When I first started doing online dating profile critiques, I don't do these anymore, but for many years when I was hardcore in the Black Dragon stuff, I had an online dating critique service, and I would take guys' profiles and critique their profiles, critique their DMs, their messages, and help them get laid online. And I was shocked to see, there wasn't a lot of these guys, but there was enough of a percentage to shock me. Guys who could not get dates on the online dating sites, at least in theory, who were better looking than me. They were better looking than me. They were better looking than me. It was so funny. And like, oh, I just can't get laid. And they were doing everything wrong. All their technique was off. Their communication was all off. Their profile was all off. Their pictures were terrible, on and on and on. It's not because they couldn't get laid, it's because they didn't use the proper technique. It had nothing to do with Instagram or all the chads taking all the girls or any of that stuff. So that's another symptom of social media really causing problems. I could go on and on and on about the problems of social media, but let me go through some of the good things about social media that I have utilized. One great thing about social media, Facebook has been instrumental in this over the past 15 years, although as the world kind of starts to leave Facebook behind and goes more to Instagram and things like that, this is less of an issue. It's more about Instagram these days. Resurrecting old women. So what do I mean by that? I have a return rate, as I've said many times, of 94%. That means 94% of all the women I've had sex with at least twice, when they leave me because they want a temporary monogamous boyfriend, they circle around and they come back. Sometimes it takes a few weeks, sometimes it takes 6 months, sometimes it takes 2, 3, 4 years. But they almost always come back 94%. And one of the biggest reasons they've come back is because I can use social media to find them again. Before we had social media, and you younger guys don't even know this, but you guys are my age, you'll remember. You guys are my age. Do you remember back in the olden days, back in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, when you like broke up with a girl or she broke up with you and you want to hook up with her again, you want to circle back with her, and you couldn't find her? You couldn't, all you had was a phone number, right? That was it. You had a phone number and it changed. And so you're fucked. You couldn't find these women? What are you gonna do? Hire a private investigator? I actually knew some guys who actually paid like $150 to do like a skip trace on women to find ex-girlfriends so they could hook up with them again. But getting back to an ex-chick or an ex, someone you dated, FB, MLTR, girlfriend, whatever, was not really possible in most cases back pre-social media. But since social media, it is easy. And I have had sex with numerous women, including recently, who I brought back into my life directly because of social media. Actually, I said this 10 plus years ago, and guys were surprised when I said it, but it's true. Women change their phone numbers and their email addresses more than they change their social media accounts. So actually back then, having a woman's Facebook profile, even if you didn't friend her, you didn't have to friend her, by the way. You have to actually add her as a friend. You just find her Facebook profile and add it to one of your favorites. That's it, there she is. Having that is actually more valuable than having her phone number, because especially if they're young, women change their phone numbers all the goddamn time. Okay, I've had the same phone number for almost 30 years. Women change their phone numbers every fucking year, whatever. And their email addresses, because before it was back, get her number, get her email, back in the day. And I was saying, no, get her social media, or at a minimum, find her in social media, and you can use that later to circle her back. I have done this scores and scores of times, and it's great, and I wouldn't have a 94% return rate if it were not for social media. If it were back in the old days where all I had was a phone number and that's it, it'd be hard to get girls, or at least some of them, to bring them back. So social media is awesome. I've also made a lot of money on social media through my Black Dragon business. I have used Facebook, I have used Twitter. Before Twitter became a shithole, I used Twitter to get coaching clients. I've used LinkedIn to get consulting clients. I've made a lot of money on social media. I have certainly made a lot of money advertising on social media, which is another great thing about social media. So that's also a good thing. Although on the other hand, let's get back to some negatives here. Social media today, using your business on social media, is a fucking nightmare. If you see my YouTube videos, you have seen the rigmarole that I have had to go through just to not get banned, just to be algorithm friendly. I have to say cerveza sickness instead of COVID-19. I have to purposely avoid certain words. I have to purposely avoid certain words in the titles. I have to purposely put stuff in the tags. It is an absolute fucking nightmare from hell. And that's just YouTube. Instagram is even worse. I recently got banned, not suspended, banned from Instagram. Banned. That means they don't give any warnings. You just go in one day and your account is gone. It's gone. It was just gone. And so I yelled at my Instagram people and apparently Instagram said we had to ban you because someone was using a third-party app. No one was using a third-party app. It just wasn't true. And then my Instagram people told me, and my other marketing people told me, well, yeah, you talk about dating and relationships and girls and sex. You're going to get fucking banned. Guys getting banned left and right. So now I'm going to have to reorient even more just to not get banned off fucking Instagram, which is kind of ground zero for a social media presence these days. So it is a nightmare being active on social media in a business context. You know, years ago, it was easy. It was easy. It was so nice. It was so fun. I mean, YouTube was like a dream come true back in like 2009. It was great. It was truly free speech. Today, you can't say anything on YouTube. You'll get fucking banned or flagged or whatever. Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff. You know all the stories. If you watch the Joe Rogan podcast, things like that, you know all the stories. You know all the horror stories about people who got banned and canceled. The fucking president of the United States has been social media canceled. I mean, Jesus Christ. Whether or not you think it's a good idea, I don't. I'm for free speech. By the way, and I've mentioned this before in my blogs, I am a free speech absolutist. The right wing hates free speech. The left wing hates free speech. Everybody hates free speech except for me and one or two libertarians. There's only one or two libertarians left on the earth. So me and one or two libertarians, we're for absolute free speech. You should be allowed to say literally whatever you want, and the government should not be able to stop you. Individual websites can stop you. That's their decision because that's their property. But the government should not be allowed to stop you. Well, Caleb, what about threatening to assassinate people and stuff? Yes, you should be allowed to say that. The government can investigate you if they want, but they can't stop you. You should be allowed to say any words with your mouth that you want. It's really interesting. I saw a documentary, a left-wing documentary years ago about not being able to swear on TV. And this left-wing guy was saying, and he's right, he was saying, you know, it's insane that certain sounds you make with your mouth are illegal. So if I say bus, that's legal. But if I say fuck, that's illegal. And he was making a thing about how insane that was. Yet, I wonder what that guy would feel about if someone chose to say the N-word and make that sound with their mouths. I promise you that left-wing guy would say, no, that shouldn't be allowed. So everyone's disingenuous about this. By the way, let me point out something really quick. Yes, the right wing is against free speech also. This fantasy that the right wing is for free speech, but the left wing aren't, is insanity. I lived through the 80s. I grew up in the 80s when the right wing was in control. There was no free speech in the fucking 80s. If you said anything about sex, if you said anything about Jesus, there was a Martin Scorsese. Martin Scorsese made a movie about Jesus in the 80s. Called The Last Temptation of Christ. You guys who are my age or older, you remember what happened. Millions upon millions of right-wingers descended on the theaters and said, this movie cannot be shown. It cannot be shown because it doesn't show Jesus the way we want to show. The right wing hates free speech. Now, what is true is the right wing is more amenable to talking to people of the opposite political viewpoints and having those discussions. That part is true. So, for example, and left-wing journalists will tell you this, you can have a left-wing journalist who calls up, you know, Antifa, an extreme left-wing, you know, fringe group, and they'll say, we'd like to come and interview you for your views, and Antifa will say, fuck you fascists, and hang up the phone. And then that same journalist will call up like, white supremacists or skinheads, far right-wing group, and they say, we'd like to come in and interview you about your views. And they say, sure, come on out. We'll talk to you whatever you like. So yes, the right is much more amenable to discuss things with the left than the left is to discuss things with the right, because left-wingers tend to be snowflakes and pussies. That's true. But in terms of free speech, right-wingers point at that and they convert that to, we want free speech, and the left doesn't. Incorrect. If the country was run by people like Ted Cruz, one of the first people to be canceled off the internet would be me. What do I talk about? I talk about America is collapsing and I'm against traditional marriage. I would be gone in a fucking heartbeat if the right wing was in control. They hate free speech too. So as usual, the right hates free speech, the left hates free speech. They just hate different things. And because the only two options you have, left-wingers or Trump supporters, because they both hate free speech, of course, these social media platforms also hate free speech. And I want to reiterate again, it's not because they're left-wing. They are left-wing. Google is left-wing. Twitter is left-wing. YouTube is left-wing. I'm not pretty sure about Instagram yet, but it looks like it's left-wing to me. Yes, they are left-wing, but that's not why they're against free speech, because if they were right-wing, they would also be against free speech. It would just be a different set of things they'd be against. So my point is, if your only two political, ideological options in the collapsing Western world are left and right, both of which hate free speech, social media is going to hate free speech. So you've got to be ridiculously, stupidly careful what you say on social media, unlike 10 years ago when you could say anything you wanted to. And it's sad because not theoretically, it was like this. The internet between 2000, maybe 2015 was indeed a free speech zone. You could say whatever you wanted. And it was wonderful. It was beautiful. It was this wonderful alternative to television and radio, which were locked down tight by things like the FCC, where you couldn't say all this stupid shit again. And unfortunately now, and this is amazing to say, but it's true, you probably have more freedom of speech on a traditional old school radio station run and managed by the FCC than you do on YouTube. And that's a horrible, depressing thing to say, but it's true. You've seen all these people on YouTube who bleep themselves when they say swear words because they're terrified about being demonetized. I have to say things like cerveza sickness on my YouTube videos instead of saying COVID because of all the problems that could cause on my YouTube channel. It's absolutely ridiculous. There are certain topics I can't even discuss on my YouTube channel. There's a particular topic I get asked about a lot regarding the cerveza sickness and something starting with the letter V. I can't even discuss it. If I even bring it up, my channel could be banned. Yeah, isn't that nice? Great. So what I'm doing to combat this is, and I started doing this a few months ago, I really should have done this 3 or 4 years ago, and I thought about doing this 3 or 4 years ago, but I was stupid, and I just didn't do it. I have branched out to the alt-tech sites, the alt-tech websites, in terms of the new social media sites that are trying to rise up and go against the big boys like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and so on. As a matter of fact, I will pull up a list here of all the other social media platforms I am on at the moment that are outside the big ones. So yes, I'm on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. Okay, those are the big guys. I am also on Snapchat. I am also on TikTok. I post TikTok videos and Snapchat videos almost every day, about 5-6 days a week. I am on Clubhouse. So in terms of the actual alt tech, I am on BitChute. That is an alternative to YouTube. I am on Rumble. That is another alternative to YouTube. I am on Minds. That's kind of an alternative to YouTube/Facebook. I am on MeWe. That is an alternative to Facebook. And I am on Gab. That is an alternative to Twitter. And some or all of the 4 or 5 sites I just mentioned push very hard in the right-wing direction. Minds and Gab in particular really, really skew right-wing. Matter of fact, if you go to Gab right now and just kind of poke around, you'll just be gobsmacked by a wall of right-wing societal programming and Trump worshipers and people like that. And it's just basically the opposite of the left-wing crap you get on the typical social media sites. So again, unfortunately, we're back to, you only get two options in this world. Unfortunately, you get a bunch of psycho-socialist, SJW, woke left-wingers, and you get a bunch of crazy nationalist Trump psychos, and you don't really get a choice other than those two groups. So you got to play the game, and you got to go for one or both. I'm unfortunately having to choose both. Matter of fact, I just started an account at Odyssey, and so that is kind of a sort of a YouTube alternative, although Odyssey is a little more creative. They actually pay you in cryptocurrency when you do well on there based on your traffic, and people can tip you and things like that. Kind of interesting. So I just started that. So I'm going to add that to the repertoire. There's one or two other places I might add, but what I'm starting to do now, what we've actually been doing now for a few weeks / months, is we cross-post all of our content to these sites to start building up audiences at these sites. A, so I can have a little more freedom of speech, and B, if I ever get banned or permanently banned where I can't get my account back, like I did on Instagram, I was able to get my account back eventually. But if I ever get permanently banned, permanently canceled, I will be on these sites and I'll have an audience already built up over there, so I'll be okay. And like I said, I should have built up the audiences in the alt tech sites quite a while ago. At least 3 years ago, I should have done this. I was very stupid to not have done that. Should have done that, but I didn't. And the way it goes, and so now I'm kind of playing catch up on these sites. And I'm offering this to you as an example of what you will have to do if you have an online business, particularly one that is personality based. And when I mean a personality based business, I'm talking about a business where you are the brand. So Alpha Male 2.0, I am the brand. Caleb Jones is the brand. So you see my name and a picture of me and all that good stuff. If you're selling hard products, then you are not a personality based business and you can do things a little differently. But if you have a personality-based business, you should be on all the social media sites and platforms where your niche congregates. So if you're like a business consultant, you need to be on LinkedIn. If you're selling to women, you need to be on Pinterest. And if you're selling to young people, you need to be on Snapchat and TikTok, etc. So you need to be on all those platforms, even if you think they're stupid, even if you think they're ridiculous. And I should say a few words about that. I'm on TikTok, and I will be on TikTok for the long term, as long as TikTok is there. That's where the audience is going. And TikTok is stupid. TikTok is ridiculous. TikTok is great if you're if maybe you're an 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid, and you like to watch videos of guys putting firecrackers up their butt cracks and lighting them on fire and crap like that. That's what TikTok is. And so it's ridiculous and it's stupid, but that's where the audience is, and that is where the audience is going. TikTok is growing by leaps and bounds, so I'm there. And that's just how this works. And I don't have to like the platforms. I'm making a business decision. I'm making a profitability decision on these things. I am not making a philosophical decision, and that's what I'll wrap this podcast up with. That's very important. If you want to make the most amount of money possible on the least amount of time possible, which is the objective of Alpha Male 2.0 to a degree, as long as it's location dependent, you need to run your business in terms of what makes you the most money, not in terms of your philosophy. So I just mentioned I'm on social media sites that are far left-wing and far right-wing, and I'm the opposite to both those people. I'm a libertarian. I'm for teeny tiny government. That opposes me directly with Donald Trump supporters. Donald Trump, when he was president, in terms of government spending, I showed this on my blogs, pre-COVID was like a drunk sailor on a spending spree. On a goddamn shopping spree, he jacked up spending and the deficit and the debt more than any other president before him, and that's difficult to do before cerveza sickness. After it, he was even worse. So, and not one Donald Trump supporter, not one said, "Oh my God, Donald Trump, what the hell are you doing? You're going to bankrupt our country." They didn't care. And left-wingers obviously love big government too. So I am opposed to both these things, but I am still present on their platforms. I'm present on left-wing crap like YouTube and right-wing crap like Gab. I'm present on both, and I need to be because my audience are in both places. So I'm not going to say, "Oh, I disagree with these politics of these places, therefore I'm not going to be there." That is a great way of being poor. You don't want to run a business like a political campaign. You want to run a business like a business. Your job is to make money and make profit and sell your stuff. So go wherever your audience is, even if maybe the politics of the platform that you're on is not aligned to yours. And most likely you are probably either a left-winger or a right-winger. You're probably not a libertarian like me. And so if you are a left-winger or right-winger, it's very easy for you to find a home. Us libertarians are in bigger trouble. We don't have that option. So you won't be as worse off as me unless you are a libertarian, and if you are, I'm sorry. You're fucked like I am. No one likes you. Just the way it goes. So where is this all going in terms of social media as a form of online commerce and as perhaps a tool to date and or get laid? Well, unfortunately, social media is here to stay, and so it's not going anywhere. It's going to probably increase. It's just going to change as time goes on. And as I have mentioned in the past, what's going to happen eventually, this is going to happen anytime soon, but eventually these big social media sites will go away and will be replaced by something else. MySpace ran the world for several years, and very quickly it vanished when it got clobbered by Facebook. Facebook is now, at least in my opinion, in the process of, it's not going away per se, but it's not the cool place to be anymore. That would be Instagram. And you've had things like Snapchat, Clubhouse, TikTok expand and grow rapidly. So at some point, you're going to have things that do replace, for example, YouTube. Someday, YouTube will go away and something will replace it. Probably one of the alt tech sites that I just listed, one of them. I don't know which one. If I knew which one, I'd be 100% there, but I don't know which one, so I'm on all of them. But at some point, Twitter will be replaced by something less bad. YouTube will be replaced by something less bad. Whatever. Facebook will be replaced by something less bad. And just like any other technology, and I've talked about this in detail when I talk about online dating, when it gets replaced, let's say when YouTube gets replaced, which will happen at some point, when it gets replaced, the new thing will be amazing. It'll be awesome. And it'll be really easy to make a lot of money and get your word out and get your branding out across the spectrum on social media for very cheap or free. And it's going to be amazing. And then it's going to start to get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And it's going to start to suck too. And then it will be replaced by something else. This is the cycle. Facebook was awesome for a few years, and then it got worse and worse and worse and worse. YouTube was amazing for about a decade. It was great. And now it's a nightmare. And it's going to get worse and worse and going to be replaced by something else. And the thing that replaces it, and I can't wait for it to be replaced. That's going to be a very, very good day for me. Thank goodness. I want free speech to come back. And it'll come back temporarily, and then it'll suck again. And thus goes the cycle of life. So, if you are a lifelong entrepreneur like I am, I'm an entrepreneur for the rest of my life. I'm never going to retire. I think that's silly and ridiculous. The nature of my work will change. The amount of work I put in a typical week will certainly change as I get older, but I'm never going to retire. If you're like me and you're going to be a lifelong entrepreneur, that means that you need to be prepared for every 5 to 10 years to shift your approach on what you're doing to reflect what the world is now doing based on these changing social media platforms. It's just the way it goes. Don't get mad about it. Don't get pissed off about it. There were a lot of people very angry when MySpace went away. Matter of fact, I was one of them. I was getting laid on MySpace. It was amazing, especially for younger girls. It was so incredible. And when it switched to Facebook, you really couldn't do that anymore. The big difference between MySpace and Facebook is MySpace, you could hit up girls. Hey, how's it going? And they're like, hi, how are you? And they'd be very friendly. Facebook, both now and back then, you couldn't just hit up random chicks. If you hit up a random girl back then on Facebook, she'd be like, who the hell are you? Block, delete, block. The culture was different. So I was pissed when MySpace went away, but it's okay. It's all okay. I've made plenty of money on Facebook ads. I'm making plenty of money today on YouTube ads. I'm doing fine. And I'll do fine on future platforms, and you will too, as long as you provide content on them. And, we could talk more about, maybe in a future podcast, we could talk more about how much content to put on social media, how often you should post to it, what platforms to use. If that's something you're interested in, let me know. Send me an email or post a comment on wherever you listen to this podcast, and maybe I could do a part 2 to this podcast in terms of social media. The blessing and the curse of the modern era, social media. Yes. Well, that's it. I will see you next week. Have a good one.